What is up, guys? So I just got out of seeing Avengers Endgame for the second time, and I'm definitely going to watch it a third, and I just really wanted to talk about it in a review. I know most people haven't seen it yet because it has not come out in America, and obviously you don't want to be spoiled, so this video will be a spoiler-free review. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, this is fine. You can definitely watch this review, or after you watch the movie, you can check out to this review, but also a spoiler review that will probably be going up in a couple of days. Oh, and one thing I should definitely mention is that the marketing for this movie was pretty tight. I mean, they didn't really give away anything about the movie in the trailers, the posters, the photos, or even like the synopsises and stuff. So for the the footage and the posters and the pictures to put on this video to edit in, it's not very easy because they left everything out of the trailers, which I liked. I love the fact that they didn't reveal anything in the trailers at all. So you go into this movie completely blind, and they trusted that audiences will still be incredibly excited, even though they left out a lot of the incredibly exciting things about this movie in the trailer. So when I'm talking about something, even in a spoiler-free review, it probably will be a little bit too, maybe even impossible to put footage or pictures that correspond with what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to put this poster here, and there'll be a little bit movement there as well, but you don't need to watch this video. You can just listen to it, and you can treat it as kind of like a podcast where you don't watch, you just listen. So that will basically be this video. So with that in mind, let's go over my spoiler-free review for the culmination of 21 movies, 11 years, 3 phases, and 1 long saga of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in what is maybe the biggest movie ever, Avengers Endgame. So obviously, with Avengers Endgame being the culmination of 21 movies, 11 years, 3 phases, and 1 saga of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it had a lot of pressure on its back to accomplish a lot of things to end off this saga, and obviously people were confident that this movie was going to be good because Marvel is a very, very consistent studio, or a consistent universe, where basically every movie, or at least most of the movies, range from good to amazing. So people were confident that Avengers Endgame was going to be a great movie, but at least it still had a lot of pressure on its back to end all of these storylines, and I'm here to say that it does everything, all of that, perfectly, and I cannot think of a better way to do so. Obviously, I'm not going to go into detail about how they do it. If you want to check out why or how they did it, then you can watch the movie, obviously, or you can check out my spoiler review, which will come out in a couple days. But I just think that the way they brought together everything in this movie, they brought together the entirety of this universe from the 11 years of build-up, and they ended it off in this movie, obviously after Avengers Infinity War devastated them, and now they're on a comeback. It's pretty insane what they did here. It's kind of mind-boggling. I watched this movie, and myself as well as the friend I went with, we were losing our minds about what was happening on screen. Again, I'm not going to go into detail about what I lost my mind over. I will, however, say that the best part of this movie is easily the third act. The third act is incredibly mind-boggling, which is great for this movie because, for me, in my personal opinion, the most important part of a movie or any movie is the third act. You can have 2 mediocre first 2 acts, but if the third act is good, then it is, in my opinion, probably going to be remembered as a good movie. This movie, thankfully, has an incredible first and second act, but it has a masterpiece of a third. The third act is insanely good, which means this movie is going to end up being a very fondly remembered movie, at least for me. That's the part of the movie that you end up on. That's the part of the movie that the movie is building up to, and that's the part of the movie that you remember the most. Thankfully, that is the best part of the movie, the third act. My only problem with the third act, as well as the movie as a whole, is that it ends this incredible achievement of the first 3 phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is now done, and that's pretty insane, but at the same time, even though it's incredibly sad that it is, they ended it the best possible way they can with Avengers Endgame, ended all the character arcs, ended all the story arcs of certain characters, ended all of this universe, this saga of the Infinity Saga perfectly, and I have basically no complaints about how they did that. In fact, I don't really have any complaints about this movie at all. I thought that, first of all, it was hilarious. This movie was such a funny movie. There are certain characters that are just there to be comedy relief, but also they're there for other things as well, and the movie is not the funniest movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, nor is it the funniest superhero movie I've seen, out of the last 2 movies, superhero movies I've seen, but at the same time, I didn't want it to be funny. I want it to be a little bit more serious and action-packed than the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe compared to the comedy, but at the same time, this movie was very funny, and I think the comedy hit for the most part. There were not a lot of moments where they were making a joke that it didn't land. that the theater wasn't laughing their asses off. It was definitely a genuinely funny movie, and I think they put the comedy in incredibly genius places. Like, after a pretty emotional moment where you want some relief from that moment, they put some comedy in there, and they did that sometimes in this movie, and I think that worked very, very well. I think it worked for just to give a little bit of relief after that emotional moment, and that happened quite a lot. It happened a lot throughout the entirety of the movie, the beginning, the middle, and the end. So definitely a very, very funny movie, and I think they used the exact right amount of comedy for this movie, a movie that definitely needed to be very intense, definitely needed to be very emotional and action-packed as well, and I'm here to say that it is all of those things in spades. So first of all, let's talk about the action of Avengers Endgame. Obviously, this movie had to be action-packed, and it definitely is. The action, it's not like non-stop action. There's a lot of stopping for character moments, twists and turns, story development, and just continuing the movie, and not just action. But when there is action, it's just so awesome to see. There is a battle at the end. I don't think it's a spoiler to say there's a battle at the end of an Avengers movie, but that battle, watching it, it's just mind-boggling that they pulled this off. Obviously, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is an achievement on its own. It's incredible and insane that they actually pulled off the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but my mind has never been this boggled, and I've never been able to not comprehend how insanely awesome something is on screen until I watched Avengers Endgame. Avengers Infinity War comes pretty close to that epicness, but Avengers Endgame is just on a whole nother level of epicness. The awesome fight scenes, again, near the end especially. Like I said earlier, the third act of this movie is a complete masterpiece, and a part of that is the action. Obviously, the first two acts, or how many ever acts this 3-hour movie has, it's really good. It's very good. It's insanely good, but the third act is a genuine masterpiece, and again, the action is a huge part of why that is. So the action in Avengers Endgame is pretty awesome, but again, there is even more to that in this movie, because this movie is incredibly emotional as well, and the emotion in this movie is so incredibly high, not only because of, spoiler alert, I guess, death scenes. Not a spoiler to say that there are characters that die in this movie. I'm not going to say who, I'm not going to say how many, but there are certain characters that die in the movie that the death scenes hit incredibly hard, especially for one of them. The deaths in this movie are just so incredibly emotional. There are other things too. There are other certain moments that are incredibly epic, incredibly emotional as well. This movie in general, the entirety of the concept of this movie is a very emotional concept, where the concept is, this is a world where half the population was killed or was just erased from existence, and that is already a very emotional concept, and I do think that they did that incredibly well. But what they really did well was the emotion of the ending of this saga, the ending of the culmination of the saga. They definitely used that emotion very well. Again, certain character deaths, certain moments that are just so incredibly emotional. I cried a couple times in this movie. I'm not going to say how many, because that might spoil how many deaths there are, but I did cry a couple times in this movie, which is more than Infinity War. A movie where I thought they had one of the best death scenes in cinematic history with Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. A lot of people died, trillions and trillions, maybe even quadrillions of people died in this universe, but Peter Parker's was the saddest. But somehow, some way, not only did they make more sad, emotional death scenes in this movie, but one of them is 10 times more emotional than Spider-Man's death scene in Avengers Infinity War, and that definitely is a pretty awesome thing for the movie to accomplish, just to have that emotion, for a movie to pour out emotion in an audience member. I think that it is a huge accomplishment for the movie. Obviously, it is a little bit easier for Avengers Endgame because they have a lot of movies to build up these characters and for you to genuinely care about these characters, which after watching all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, you definitely should, especially for certain characters, and that made it a lot easier for this movie to deliver an incredibly emotional scene, or a couple incredibly emotional scenes for the ending of certain characters, the ending of certain character arcs, and obviously the ending of certain character lives. I think this movie is incredibly emotional as it succeeds in every single emotional beat that it tries to succeed at. It succeeds in every comedy beat it tries to succeed at, and it definitely succeeds in the satisfying ending to this saga, as well as the action, as well as certain epic kind of fan servicey moments that I do not care about at all. Like, I don't care that it's fan service. I thought it was awesome. Fan service is not inherently bad if it's done well, and in this movie, I think that they deserve the fan service after everything that they did in this movie. There are certain fan servicey moments that are incredibly epic, certain moments that are not fan service but are also incredibly epic, certain moments that just blew my mind in Avengers Endgame, which is why, even though I just saw it twice, and I'm guessing that this is just me riding the high of just watching this movie, but this might possibly be my favorite movie of all time, although Avengers Infinity War was also my favorite movie of all time, and before that, Captain America Civil War was my favorite movie of all time. It's insane. I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and somehow, some way, they up themselves and up the ante every single time, and it's just mind-boggling to me. I don't think they're ever going to up, and I don't think they're ever going to improve on Avengers Endgame, the ultimate superhero movie, the greatest superhero movie of all time, possibly the greatest movie of all time, or at least for a person like me that just watches mostly superhero movies. Avengers Endgame ends up being easily my favorite movie of all time. After me currently riding the high of watching this movie, I think that it is insanely good. Again, the third act of this movie is a masterpiece, a complete masterpiece that accomplishes everything it's trying to do incredibly well, while the first two acts of this movie are also incredibly good. So obviously I will give Avengers Endgame a 10 out of 10, as I think it is perfect. I have no complaints about this movie, and it is my favorite movie of all time. So anyway, let me know what you thought about Avengers Endgame in the comments down below, and make sure not to leave any spoilers in the comments either, because there are certain people who have not watched the movie yet and are watching this video in spite of not watching the movie yet. But still, don't put any spoilers in the comments down below. If you want to put spoilers in the comments, wait till I put out my spoiler review. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, as well as the top corner of the video. I'm incredibly excited about the fact that this movie exists now. Incredibly excited to watch it a third, maybe fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time. I don't know how many times I'm going to watch it. Probably like 4, but either way, I'm definitely very, very, very happy about how they ended this saga. But let me know your thoughts, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.